the people that say they're against animal abuse, and that's nearly everybody, but that ends as soon as you bring up veganism.
I actually believe we're even more frugivore than herbivores.
That's why I do eat all the fruits and the veggies that I can, and Doug Grant will talk about this.
Being a beekeeper and taking some of the honey, to me, is definitely not on the same scale.
We need to open up our circles of compassion and start including the animals.
Hi, and welcome to this new episode of The Light Leaders. Today, I'm with Gary Yourofsky. So, Gary, you're one of the most famous vegan activists in the world, and I'm super excited to have you today. The conversation we'll have today we'll do a little bit about, why being vegan, why plant-based, but it's what I told you before we recorded. My audience already probably very knowledgeable about what's wrong with factory farming, and we're gonna also dive deeper into ethical questions, into health questions. I'll do a quick intro also myself to share what I stand as, because some of my audience, there's a lot who are into being raw vegan, being into a fruitarian movement also, and that's also or spiritual movement, and that's also the angle that I come at it. But first, with you, Gary, I just watched your speech, most of it on YouTube. It's like over an hour and has over 1 million views now. And yeah, you've been a vegan activist for a very long time. Can you introduce yourself in a couple of minutes and your story?
A couple of minutes for me, that's tough, but I'm going to try. My name is Gary Yourofsky. I've been vegan since 96. I decided then and there in July of 96, I was going to be a voice for the voiceless. I was going to speak out for the animals, and I was going to do whatever I could possibly do to make the world a better place for them. I started out running the gamut of activism, doing civil disobedience, getting arrested intentionally. Back then, we used to think that media was the most valuable thing. I no longer think that, but that was the only way to get on the 5 o'clock news back in the day. So I would chain my neck to the wheel axle of my car and use my car to block an entranceway to a fur store, opening night of the Shrine Circus. I started doing street protest. I did several hundred of those, writing letters to the editor, back to the media stuff. And then in 97, I decided with 4 other people we were going to liberate some animals. So from Michigan to Canada is a hop, skip, and a jump away. We drove over to Blenheim, Ontario, which is a couple hours away, and opened up the cages for more than 1,500 mink who were going to have their necks broken manually at a fur farm. Gave them a chance to be free. Things didn't go well for me and several others that night. We were apprehended, ended up doing some jail time 2 years later after the trial wound down. And then I started getting invited into classrooms. If you watched the news in Michigan back in the late 90s, you knew who I was. I was all over the news. And when I gave a lecture for the first time, I did not expect it to go well because all I ever heard on the streets was "fuck you, get a life." So when I finished this 60-minute speech at Canton High School for 800 students, kind of put my head down and I was, waiting for the backlash, and instead I got a standing ovation. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying because this is when I realized I had an epiphany that education is where it's at. They didn't know what was going on, just like I didn't know most of my life, just like you didn't know. I mean, unless you had some vegan parents, virtually nobody knew what was going on with the animals that we were eating, that we were wearing, that we were thinking it was okay to exploit. So I started to do more lectures. I wanted to teach people what was going on, and that's when I became the most effective activist that I could be and started converting people. And by the way, that speech that you watched, there's another version out there with over 4 million hits. And if you combined, I think they've translated that speech into more than 30 languages. I believe there's more than 20 or 25 million views right now worldwide on all of those videos. Just that Georgia Tech speech. And then I have other speeches that I also put out there as well. But that Georgia Tech speech that I did in 2010, That's when I was in my prime. That was the first time I actually recorded one of my lectures. I started in 2002, full time doing lectures, but I grew up without the internet. I'm 55. I grew up not documenting everything that I ever did, so I was in a different mindset. And one of the students at Georgia Tech videotaped it, and thank goodness that he did. He put it online and helped me change the world.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so much impact you've been having in this, and of course, the internet and documenting it helps to scale it.
Yeah.
So congratulations on
Yeah.
that. Um, I'm curious also. Before I have so many questions, and we'll dive into it. I'll do a little intro about me so you see where I come from. Also, just on that topic, I grew up in France. No vegan parents, like was eating at McDonald's. All this, not all the time, but sometimes. Basically, a lot of meat and not the healthiest. Also in my nutrition. I moved to Australia when I was about 27. I had a spiritual awakening in many different things, but also became, I would say, mainly vegan at the time. I read also *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, and it made me question everything on what we're doing. And one of them was obviously the factory farming, especially, and animal abuse that we have as normal as in our society. So I also watched a few documentaries. I think What the Health and other. Maybe I watched your speech and I don't remember. I don't know, but this kind of like usual vegan awareness raising things, let's say, and yeah, it makes sense. So I transitioned, became like 8 years ago. I said 80% vegan, and it became pretty quickly 100%. I moved to Bali 6 years ago, and after a couple of years here, I also became mainly raw. So now I eat I eat 100% vegan minus the honey. We might talk about that, and then 90% raw, probably 80% fruit too. I actually believe we're even more frugivore than herbivores, which is something we can talk about too. But yeah, that's a bit where I'm coming from. A lot of my audience, they're also into that. And about building a new Earth, and I definitely don't see a place for at least factory farming in the new Earth, maybe also for any kind of eating animal products. So yeah, that's basically the angle. I'm
How
uh,
are you
I'm
feeling?
curious
How
before
are
we
you
dive.
feeling on the raw diet, by the way? Do you enjoy the rawness?
Yeah, I feel great.
Yeah.
I feel great. Yeah, I feel a lot of energy, and yeah, it feels good for my mind, for my energy, spiritually also. I also feel ethically it has it might be even the next layer, and I want to. Well, let's get into it now, actually.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because on the ethical, well, no, I think it's a bit too advanced. Let's start with. Can you give just a like short version of why you became vegan and why it makes sense for people to be vegan?
Well, I think it's important that we realize that animals were not put on this earth for human beings, and that's the main problem we have is everybody walks around thinking that animals are here for us to eat, to wear, to force them to make us, to force them to entertain us, to make them experiments in medical studies. And once you realize that they're just disenfranchised beings, just like other groups of humans who have been oppressed and exploited throughout time, they are no different. In fact, nowadays, after 29 years being vegan, I realize that their oppression, their exploitation, their slavery is way worse than anything humans have gone through. And it's because of the sheer numbers alone. We're talking more than 80 billion land animals every year on this planet are killed just by the meat, dairy, and egg industries. And then when you throw in the marine animals, more than 2 trillion. So you can add up all the humans since the beginning of time who have been exploited, oppressed, and raped, and harmed, and murdered. And those numbers pale in comparison. So this is why I'm focusing on the animals, all of my time on helping them. They're the ones that need it the most. And then if you do want to connect it to the human rights stuff, think about that we became experts at oppressing and harming each other because we practiced on the animals first. Their slavery goes back before human slavery, their oppression before human oppression. So it's important that we end violence and hatred and discrimination at its root And that root is speciesism. So I decided that once my blinders were taken off, I wasn't going to take part in this anymore. Now, like most people, I thought I was an animal lover, but once I realized I was eating them, there were carcasses in my refrigerator. There were cut up carcasses in my stomach. That was not love. That was pure hatred. And I didn't want to take part in that. And I don't think most people want to take part in this. They're just not thinking about what they're doing. And that's what I decided to go out and do, to take off the blinders, to deprogram people, to unbrainwash society and open their eyes. And thank goodness I was able to do all of my lectures. I did more than 2,600 lectures over the years. I convinced professors all over the country to bring me in, and it really worked. Honestly, I had about a 50% conversion rate, which is amazing because I walked into every classroom with everybody's arms crossed and they hated me, and I heard them snickering in the background. I should have brought a hamburger in. Oh, here comes the fucking vegan. Here comes the PETA guy. But, over these 60 minutes, I saw the arms become uncrossed. I saw the hands go above their heads after the Slaughterhouse video was shown. I saw them open up, and it was amazing to see change happen in 60 minutes from this until yes, okay, I understand. Yes, I'm going to become vegan. I'm going to live vegan now. So it was an amazing experience. And from 2002 on, all I ever did was focus on education-based activism. That's where it's at. I'm not saying we need to eliminate all the other forms of activism, but if you had a pie about activism, that pie needs to be 80-90% education-based.
Yeah, which we're doing together today also. So yeah, thanks for that's why the podcast is here too. And yeah, it's interesting because I was reflecting for myself also because I did a lot of content on plant-based and veganism. And in the end, there's like a lot of other missions in the world that we could look at, right? Because there are wars, there's crime, there's rape on this planet, there's how we treat nature that's really bad sometimes. And of course, I'm sure you and I are also doing things about it. But with, I guess, the focus here is that it's so mainstream, right? And I don't know if you agree with me, but a lot of our friends and family, they're not the perpetrators of like Palestine and Israel sending bombs at each other, but they are the perpetrators of eating meat, for example. And so it's something much more accepted. Even here in conscious communities, I might go to an event, everyone will agree we shouldn't throw plastic in the ocean. Everyone will agree that we shouldn't just throw a bomb at each other and rape women and do things, of course. But then when it comes to like not abusing animal in a way, well, they'll say they're against it, but in a matter of fact, they will. So I think that's why for me, I put quite a bit of my content on it versus all the missions and quote unquote fights I could be fighting. Is that the same for you? Why you focused on
Absolutely.
this?
And well, the people that say they're against animal abuse, and that's nearly everybody, but that ends as soon as you bring up veganism. As soon as you bring up cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, and fish, all of a sudden, seemingly bright people become hillbillies, become idiots, and then they want to excuse the abuse. But if I used to tell the students that if you go look at a news article about a dog being abused, a cat being abused, a horse being abused, you could read the comments section, and everybody from vegan to non-vegan to hunters and animal researchers will make comments like, I'll kill him. Give me 2 minutes with this guy. I'll beat him up. I'll show him what it's like. But then if you show a pig or a cow being tortured and killed, you read the comments section, all of a sudden it's, bacon. Oh, that's too bad for him. Gonna have a big dinner tonight. So people have this psychotic disconnect with cows and pigs and chickens and turkeys. The reason is, though, our society conditions us for this, right? Our parents tell us it's okay. They start feeding us cut up cows, pigs, and chickens and turkeys, but they don't tell us. They don't really tell us what we're eating when we're young. Now, I don't think our parents are doing it maliciously. They were taught by their parents the wrong way, and there's this cycle of violence. But Our societies certainly lie to us. Religion lies to us. All religions tell us thou shalt not kill and use the golden rule, except when animals are involved. So they're pushing the abuse of animals. Our governments are doing it. All governments are doing it. TVs, radio stations, right? Advertisements. It's coming at us from every direction that animals don't count. So these are the creatures that are being abused the most. And then when people again say they're against animal abuse, my comment is, are you really? Can you say you're against abuse when you're eating murdered animals? When you're eating animals who have been raped or electroejaculated? When you're eating animals who have had their babies stolen from them? When you're eating baby animals? And we don't even realize that we're not only killing billions and trillions of animals, we're killing billions and trillions of baby animals, right? Chickens are killed at 6 weeks, pigs at 6 months, cows at 2.5 years. These are baby animals. So this makes the abuse so much worse to me, what we're doing. So I'm just trying to connect the dots for people, right? Trying to take those blinders off and say, if you're against animal abuse, you have to be against the abuse of all animals, not some animals, not the dogs and the cats only, not the dolphins and the whales and the horses. You have to be against all forms of abuse. And like most people, I look back to my days, it was easy to love the animals that we're taught to love, right? In most societies, we're taught to love dogs and cats and horses and dolphins and whales. So you have to expand it. And I know we have the capability because of how we feel about dogs and cats and other animals. But all of a sudden, there's this wall that I'm trying to break down that we have towards extending that decency to the cows and the pigs and the chickens and the turkeys, the ones who need it the most. And yeah, friends and family, by the way, you mentioned, man, oh gosh, I have no friend. I've never converted a friend or a family member to veganism. Can you believe that? They're now reporting that I've converted hundreds of thousands, maybe millions worldwide. Not one friend, not one family member. I'm great with strangers, but don't give me somebody that I know because they just don't listen. But that hurts the most. Because when I started and when I found out about this, of course, those were the first people I went to. And those were the people that mocked me the most, that laughed at me the most, that turned away the most. But then when I started talking to people at the gym, or when I started getting into the school system, when I started talking on the media, all of a sudden people are like, really, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. Tell me more. So, yeah, friends and family are tough. And if somebody has a magic formula for reaching friends and family, please let me know. But I've given up on them, and it's sad, but I'm not going to waste my breath on people that don't want to listen when so many people do want to listen. And that's what I'm going to encourage anybody who's listening, any of the vegans out there. Stop wasting your breath. Stop beating your head against the wall with people that are obstinate and that won't listen. Go find people that will. That is your job. Our job as vegans right now, find those people that just don't know, that want to know. Use your vegan radar. I mean, nowadays, for me, after 29 years, Alex, I can go to the gym and I don't talk to everyone at the gym about this, but I'm like, that person is going to listen. She's going to listen. He's going to listen. Ain't no way I'm talking to him. He's not listening. Use that radar. You know you have it. Just focus and go, you know what? I don't think this person's a good candidate, but I think this person is. And just start to tell them and make sure to hold them accountable. Tell them the truth, be truthful, be honest, and the truth is harsh. And you don't have to, you don't have to call them names or anything. But when I say the truth is harsh, explain electroejaculation, how we steal sperm from the male animals. And then we take that sperm and artificially impregnate, rape female animals. You need to tell them what's going on and how we're killing baby animals, chopping their heads off. Describe what a slaughterhouse is like. Describe what a factory farm is like. Describe what it's like to be tortured in a medical experiment. Let them know what's going on because that's what makes people open their eyes. That's what deprograms people. And I got firsthand knowledge that this works. I did it. I talked to 60,000 meat, dairy, and egg eaters face to face during my lecture tour, and that's what worked, holding them accountable, putting them in the victim's position.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be tough, but it works. I mean, it worked on me at the time when I watched those documentaries. Not so nice, but it does work. And now there's also on Instagram, for example, on social media, there's some people who are doing great job with AI of doing like reversing roles, and I find that's really interesting psychologically, where you'd have like a farmer cow that takes a baby from their mother as humans, and then you're in the reverse role, and you're like, whoa, that's horrible, and it makes people think. Yeah, a few things I wanted to react on, even when you talked about killing the babies. I think in the egg industry, where the even very, very baby, the male, they get like sent into grinders and stuff because they don't have a purpose. So it's definitely as something really terrible that's happening.
And
And regarding the
people don't realize that an egg farm has to have a hatchery so they have hens who can lay eggs. But in that hatchery, if those babies turn out to be males, males don't lay eggs, only females do, so they're considered useless, and they grind them up. Fully conscious, they throw them in a huge blending machine, and these are the horrible, evil things that we're doing to animals that nobody really thinks about because you've been lied to. It's hidden, and that's why people need to start listening to the vegan community when we tell you what's going on. And it's okay to be ignorant, but it's not okay to be rude and vile after you've been informed. That's what upset me the most
yeah,
always. I never got mad at any student before the lecture even when they made comments, because I remember I was the same way. It was after the lecture, once I informed you, and now you know the truth. So now I used to end my speeches with, "What's your excuse now?" And at that point, you're
yeah,
supposed to, now, I would want veganism on the spot. Most of my students did, but sometimes it was just planting a seed. But I remember that when I first found out, I didn't go vegan immediately, but I certainly stopped arguing the point. I knew I was wrong. I knew I had to make some changes. It's the people that still want to argue after they've been informed that's so frustrating.
yeah. And there is definitely an element of addiction and changing of habits where we humans, and if we've done something that thinks we're three, and I don't know, we've been going to Thanksgiving and our grandma was making the turkey, and maybe it's hard because I mean it is, to because it's like quitting an addiction. It's like someone smokes and they know they should stop but they keep going, and so I guess it's a tricky one. It's a balance of like not making excuses and taking action and just
And this is
effing
the
do it,
addiction of
and
all
at the same time
addictions.
having some compassion.
Yeah, this is the addiction of all addictions. I mean, cocaine, heroin, cigarettes, tobacco, sex, gambling ain't got shit on the addiction to power over the animals and the addiction of meat, cheese, milk, and eggs and all that fat that we're consuming, all those horrible things that for some reason our body just loves to take in, things that are bad for us. And that's what this stuff is doing to us. It's not only cruel to the animal kingdom and vicious and vile, it's terrible for our bodies too. But you know what? You
Yeah.
brought up the cigarette smoker that tries to end the addiction. They don't justify the health of it though anymore. Again, I'm going to call out the meat, dairy, and egg eaters. It's one thing to be addicted, but it's when they continue to say that it's okay, that it's healthy, that it's normal, that animals don't count, animals don't think, animals don't feel. That's when the frustration and the brain melt starts. It's like, wait a second, why don't you just tell me you're addicted or tell me you don't give a shit? I used to tell that to students
Mm.
sometimes when they did argue. I'd say, why don't you just look me in the eye and say, I don't give a shit? And then they'd say, yeah, I don't give a shit. I say, okay, then why did you tell me God says it's okay? Why did you tell me animals don't think and animals don't feel and they don't matter? Why don't you just say you don't give a shit? Because that's how you're going to shut me up. I don't know how to make people care, but I will certainly destroy all the lies that meat, dairy, and egg eaters love to use. You can't tell me God says it's okay, because if you're telling me that your God okays slavery and torture and murder, that's not God, that's the devil. And if you're going to tell me you can't get protein anywhere else, I'm going to tell you, what are you talking? There's no shortage of protein in the vegan diet.
Thank you for being with us and watching this episode. If you're here, you're probably part of the team. part of the light leaders, the ones who came here to create a new Earth, to assist the rise in consciousness of our planet. With this podcast, I aim to do just that. And I'm also a coach. I support other conscious leaders to have more impact. I do specialize on helping them grow a high impact podcast. I do one-on-one, and I also have a mastermind for it called the Impact Podcast Mastermind. And I also work one-on-one with conscious leaders on different things like growing their business, thriving on a raw vegan diet, feeling more joy and fulfillment in life, or finding their purpose. And as light leaders, I believe we can have much more impact if we work together. So if you feel the call to receive my support, let's connect. It'd be my honor to assist you. Check the link in the description below where I share more about how I might be able to help you and maybe speak to you soon.
You know, from lentils and beans and grains to fruits and vegetables. Yes, fruits have protein, people. Nuts and seeds. There's no shortage of anything. Everything the human body needs comes from the plant kingdom. So it's that pushing of lies that always upset me the most, especially after they were informed.
Yeah, and to me, there's you tell me if you like what's your view on this. To me, there's like layers almost where there's factory farming that's like I think it should be outlawed. It's like directly abused in the way it's done. And then there are some people who will eat animal products. Let's say, well, start with eating meat, and they feel they need it for their health, and they'll try to, source it as well as possible and to have it as like quote unquote human. And then there's people who are gonna have like a chicken in their backyard and eat the eggs from it. And so to me, there's kind of different layers. For example, for me, if someone has a beehive and has honey, I'm okay. I feel it's an exchange, and I, might change my mind on that. But yeah, how far do you take it? Because obviously there's factory farming, really, really wrong. And then there's layers of things that seem morally more acceptable, like being a beekeeper and taking some of the honey. To me, is definitely not on the same scale. And then even if you call yourself vegan, or if I call myself vegan, there's still going to be some killing. Like I'll take my scooter later, I'll probably crush a few insects while I drive on the road. So I will end up killing some animal just by living. So where do you put the the cursor, let's say, on the ethical side?
Well, first of all, veganism is truly about not being involved in exploitation, the intentional killing of animals, viewing them as commodities, as property, as food, clothing, and research specimens. During my speech, I talked about it was tough enough to be an animal on this planet because animals do die because they're living with us and they suffer from us taking their land, building houses, building roads. Animals get killed by cars on the road. That's not exploitation, though. That's something that we need to get together and fix as human beings. And there are problems. There are problems that we have to solve, but they're solvable if we build our roads better. We could virtually eliminate animals being killed. There are countries and there are cities around the world who are now building tunnels under the roads, building bridges for the animals to cross the roads, and they've eliminated all those unnecessary deaths. And when we talk about crop deaths, for instance, which is something that meat, dairy, and egg eaters love to bring up, well, first of all, the animals that everybody's eating, they eat 50% of the crops on the planet, so everyone's taking part in that harm. But we need to do indoor vertical farming, which would eliminate the need for killing of any animals. We can control the environment. And we could, by the way, grow a lot more food in a safer way this way as well. But the only way to solve a slaughterhouse is to burn the motherfucker down. I have the solution. Vegans have the solution to getting rid of the abuse that cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys are going through. Stop eating them. And from there, we need to get rid of everything else. But yeah, of course, listen, I'm not going to say factory farming isn't the worst thing out there. Of course it is. And 99% of all meat, dairy, and eggs come from factory farm environments. But when we get back to the exploitation issue, I want people to understand that eating from a cage-free or free-range farm is not okay, because now, once again, We're still viewing the animal as a commodity, as human property, and we need to stop that mentality that they're here for us. They're here for themselves. Everybody has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we're denying that to the animals when we think we can take their flesh and take things that come out of their bodies and impregnate them. So yeah, let's get rid of the factory farms first, because that would take care of probably 99% of all the exploitation going on, but then we still need to work on other issues. And when we come to the honey issue as well, again, just like it's wrong to take milk from a mother cow, wrong to take eggs from a hen, it's wrong to take honey from the bees. That's their stuff. That's the stuff they produce to insulate their hives, to feed their young. Most people don't realize why the bees are vomiting, and I will bring this up as I've always done. We need to examine the things that we think are food. Why is somebody else's vomit food? Honey is vomit. Honey doesn't, help the human body in any way, shape, or form. There's no reason to be bringing it in anyways, but we're stealing something that doesn't belong to us. Now, 99% of honey comes from factory farmed environments where they're actually ripping the wings off of queen bees to make sure they stay put on these places. The drone bees, the worker bees, won't vomit and produce honey if there's not a queen bee present. So this is why I stopped. In fact, when I look back at all the horrible things that I learned about the abuse that animals were going through, I had that in the top three things: lobsters being boiled alive, pigs being lit on fire for burn research, and ripping the wings off of queen bees to make them stay put. Be like me cutting off somebody's legs to make them stay and listen to one of my lectures. That's just some evil, vile stuff. But it's stealing, right? We don't need it. And I want to put you in a natural environment now, because you're really into the raw stuff and you understand the vegan stuff. If you and I were walking through the woods and we came across a beehive, you wouldn't say, "Hey, God, Gary, I'm going to stick my head in here right now and grab you some honey like a bear." You get stung. You'd be screaming and yelling. It's a completely unnatural food item that we've created that we think we're supposed to be eating. There's no need for this. There's no necessity for this. But I want you to think about the stealing aspect. We're stealing it. It's theirs. There's not excessive amounts like the bee farmers want everyone to believe. They produce enough vomit to insulate their hives and feed their young, and that's what it's there for. We don't need it. And if you want something that tastes like that, I know you know about agave nectar. You can find, and they're now making honey from rice too. There's rice-based honey. So like all the mock items that are out there, mock meats and mock dairy and even mock eggs these days from a company called Just, there's mock honey. So if we could have the same taste and texture without exploitation of animals, why not take that path? It's an easier path to take. It's a nicer, more ethical path to take.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I actually like to blend dates in what I do. That's how I sweeten in general.
Dates
Here
are
in
great
Bali,
too.
and you could like, not gonna argue, but there's a beekeeper that I like, and I can feel he's like really connected to the bees. And to me, it's almost like a you could say a work home exchange. So he provides beehives, and there's like a harmonious system there, and then he takes some of the honey, but not all of it. Uh, so I feel this
But how
kind of a
about
symbiosis there that works.
Yeah. But how
Yeah.
about taking none of it? Now, listen, I want you to know, I'm not here to argue, but I just want to open up some other avenue. I got a great connection with bees. I really love bees. The longer I've been vegan, the more connected I get with the insect world. And I've literally saved a lot of bees, and I don't want to take anything from them. So if you got me that wants to hang out with the bees, and I do in my backyard, there used to be 20, 30, 40 bees that would just, buzz around my head, and we'd have a great symbiotic relationship. And I would build little hives for them with bamboo shoots and stuff like that, and bamboo hives, and they would stay there, and I wouldn't take anything from them. And then you got somebody that says, "I got a symbiotic relationship, but I'm taking things from them." I think my avenue and my path is much better than the other one where I take nothing and somebody else is still stealing. And obviously, I'm not going to put
Mm.
them on the same par with with a factory farm or anything like that. But there's still something wrong in my eyes of taking anything from them because, again, exploitation is exploitation. There's no need. There's no need for it. There's no need to do it. And bees do count. Bees count as animals. We have to include them.
Yeah.
It would never be okay. Even if I
Yeah.
had my own cow, and you can't take milk from the cow without exploiting, without hooking up a machine, without engaging in bestiality and squeezing their nipples, without taking milk from the young, and we're taking the honey from their young.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, on that ethical side, if we go a layer further, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, there's also something I feel more ethical into, not just being plant-based, but having more fruits in the way that, of, like, I don't feel that plants are sentient in the same way as animals in terms of emotions, in terms of having a nervous system and feeling pain. But I believe, to me, everything on this planet has some consciousness and must be treated with love. And for example, when there's even just a carrot growing and being ripped from the floor, has a little bit more of an element of violence than picking up a ripe fruit that's already ready and drops from the tree. So that's why also, to me, ethically, there's something that still has a little bit of violence in doing plant crops and taking them while they grow. And often that's why they'll have some defense mechanism. Those plants want to grow and you're ripping them, versus the fruit, which is, yeah, it's ripe, it's going to drop for you from the tree, whether you eat it or not. Do you also feel there is a little bit of violence with getting plant foods when they're growing and we're stopping that growth?
I don't think there's any involved when we're talking fruits and vegetables, but I do love the plant kingdom. I have plants, I have aloe, I have cactus, I have succulents. I got Persephone over here. I even name my plants. I have a Dracaena plant over here in the background. I don't know if you can see it, but I dig all the plants. I love the trees. But like you said, when it comes to fruit, the tree gives us the fruit. And I don't think carrots and tomatoes have any consciousness whatsoever. My latest joke is when people say this is if there was a dog or a pig in a pool drowning and there was a carrot floating by, would you jump in to save the carrot? I don't see that whatsoever. Just like the tree gives us the fruit, I think the ground also pushes up and gives us the vegetables to eat. The earth gives us this stuff. But the more I'm vegan 29 years, so I'm gearing much more towards frugivore. Now, it's a word that people need to know, and I'm kind of guilty for back in the day during my famous speech, I said humans were herbivores. Now, there are different levels
Yeah.
of herbivores people need to understand. It was hard enough to explain the word vegan when I started. This is how ancient I am. In 96, people were still saying vegan. So I had to explain the word vegan, how to pronounce it. I didn't want to get into the whole frugivore thing. I always knew that humans
Yeah.
were frugivores, but in the herbivore kingdom, there's different levels. And of course, frugivores, where human beings are, it really should be based on fruits and vegetables. And the more like so about a few months ago, I was on the plant-based news podcast with Dr. Douglas Graham, the 80-10-10 guy. And Doug got into
Oh yeah,
me a little for
he's
not being
coming to Bali.
yeah, he
Yeah.
is coming there soon. He actually invited me to come down there. I wish I could, but I can't make it. But I'm on the show, by the way. So I cleaned up my diet about 2014-ish. I believe fat is toxic. I don't like the amount of fat that anybody consumes, vegans included, and that's because of the oils and all the mock meats that all the vegans are eating. There are huge amounts of fat, and that's why it tastes good, by the way. The reason why people like meat and dairy, it's all fat. The reason why people don't like fruits and vegetables, no fat. Except one fruit, by the way, that everybody loves, avocados. Why? 32 grams of fat. It's the only fruit with huge amounts of fat. So I cleaned up my diet from fat. I virtually eat very little to no fat. So in 2014 for breakfast, I started eating a cup of barley or a cup of quinoa. I mix it in with beans and lentils, so we got no fat there. I eat about 10 to 15 pieces of fruit for lunch, 6 or 7 different vegetables for dinner. And then a few years ago, by the way, there's a company called Big Mountain that came out with tofu, but it's made from fava beans, 0 fat. I do love tofu, but tofu does have fat. Again, that's why tofu tastes really good. So I mentioned this diet that I've just told you about on the show with Dr. Douglas Graham. And the host says, "Wow, Gary, that's such a clean diet. What do you think about that, Doug?" And Doug says, "Gary, I love you. You're my favorite activist. I share your speech every day. I hate it. Get rid of the cooked food. Get rid of the grains." And all. And I'm like, "No, Doug." Now, Doug, by the way, has always been my favorite doctor since I started. But everyone calls me the OG because of 29 years of veganism. Doug's got 50 years, so I had to acquiesce. I'm like, "Okay, Doug, lay into me." So he laid into me. He said, "Gary, I got rid of my stove 45 years ago. You got to get on the Frugivore bandwagon." So since was it June, July? Since late June, early July, I started doing basically 23 to 30 bananas a day, and I gotta tell you, I fucking love it. I add in some mangoes and some dragon fruits and some peaches and nectarines too once in a while, and I am just loving it. Now, the past few weeks, though, maybe a month, I have added a cooked meal at night, and Doug's gonna hate me for this, but I brought back my cup of barley in the evening with some beans. So I'm basically frugivore till 4. You know, the raw till 4 diet. So I'm frugivore till I'm still doing at least 23 bananas, maybe 30 bananas up until that point, and then I'm doing a cooked meal at night. But I absolutely love the heavy fruit. In fact, I gained 10 pounds of muscle in the last few months, and I'm contributing it to all the bananas. Never seen a weak gorilla, by the way. Never seen a frail gorilla, right? I know they eat tons of leaves too, but I have a lot of comedy when I talk about my stuff. So just understand that. So gorillas eat bananas. Love leaves too. I've been adding kale to my smoothies too, to my big banana smoothies. So definitely get some greens in there. But frugivore, we need to be mostly frugivore. And I've been telling all my vegan friends too, how come we spend all of our time telling everybody to eat fruits and vegetables? And vegans never eat fruits and vegetables. I'm like the only vegan that I know that eats fruits and vegetables. Everyone's living off Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat and Gardein and all the mock stuff. And I get it. It was great. I enjoyed it, but there's going to come a point where you need to venture off that stuff and get down to the whole foods, the real foods, and that would be fruits and vegetables mainly.
That that's cool. Thanks for sharing. Well, yeah, first I tell you, when I listened to the speech and you said herbivore, I was like, yeah, because indeed, like some herbivores, they have 4 stomachs, they have very different, but then in that category, yeah, we're more like
Yeah.
frugivore, we're like
Again,
primates, as you
I
said,
didn't want to add
and
another
gorillas.
5 or 10 minutes in my speech. I got to explain what frugivore is. But nowadays, I actually want to explain it. Now I'm going to start doing some more Instagram videos about frugivore and explaining there's levels to
Yeah.
herbivore, which is just not eating carcasses, not eating meat, cheese, milk, and eggs. But I probably should have explained it back in the day. But the speech, that Georgia Tech speech, was already 70 minutes long. I was already pushing the limits.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like almost like a funnel of awareness, right? And we need also people to explain to the people who are going to eat at McDonald's every day and keep it simple. And then when we do a podcast together, we can go deeper because it's a different audience. Interesting what you shared also with the yeah, with the tofu. I would agree. Also, most of the soy now is genetically modified, and I think those fava beans are really high in protein also, so that can be a really nice way if you do cook food for sure. Actually, fava bean, you can eat them raw. There's some people who do, and that's a good raw source of protein. I'm excited also that you know Doug Graham and that you're like him. He's coming to Bali in a few days. We're doing an event at a raw vegan restaurant here called the Raw Temple on Friday the 7th of November if you want to fly for the occasion. And then we'll have a podcast again together. And we've done already, I think, 4 podcasts with Doug on my channel. And I've done with a lot of the raw vegan leaders like Dr. Moore, some really super healthy guys like Lou Corona in his 70s. So yeah, if you and all the people watching this want to dive into this, I've definitely documented a lot on my channel, and that's also because to me that the health factor is important, because we want to be good role models, right? If we want to attract people, there is of course the element of ethics. I often say I'm vegan for the animals and raw for health, and to me that ethical side is in itself very compelling. Like, we want to be ethical and we should already change our behavior based on that. But then if I change and I become like sick and I'm not healthy, well, to me, if I want to be nonviolent, I also need to be nonviolent with my own body, right? And so that's where doing the vegan thing, but also having almost that duty to be a good role model, to be healthy, so we inspire more people, is important. And that's why I believe also uh, doing more raw in general, or at least avoiding the processed food and more fruits and vegetables and all this is
I think it's
important. How do you
essential, by the
feel
way.
now? Do
I
you do more?
definitely think it's
Yeah.
essential, Alex, because it's like, for me, I feel my best when I'm consuming the frugivore stuff. My body thrives on nutritious foods. And the once in a blue moon time that I'm at some kind of a veg fest and I eat something that's nasty and processed, yeah, it tastes great at the moment. Well, of course, it's fat, sugar, and salt. Of course, it tastes great. Those three things make everything taste great. But it's a couple hours later, I'm going, oh, why did I eat that? Oh, my stomach's not feeling great. I'm a little worn out. So, the longer you become vegan, the more you're going to want to be healthy and feel your best. Now, I want you to know I started investigating this avenue too, because I had some friends who started getting sick, some longtime vegans. And I had a friend that passed away, Devore, from bladder cancer, my dear friend Lisa from breast cancer. And I started to think, wait a second, I thought we were supposed to be immune from this stuff. What's the connection? What do meat, dairy, and egg eaters still have in common with vegans, even though we're vegan? And I started racking my brain. And of course, I came to sugar first. And of course, you should get rid of sugar, but it wasn't sugar, because I know vegans and non-vegans that avoid sugar. And I'm thinking salt, no, I know vegans and non-vegans that avoid salt. And then I came to the revelation, it's fat. We all consume excessive amounts of fat. It made me go and investigate all the oils on the market. And I went to the grocery store, and it didn't matter which oil I looked at. The nasty, horrible Crisco oil or the high-end avocado oil, it was all 14 grams of fat per tablespoon. Now, by the way, name me one person on the planet that uses 1 tablespoon of oil when they're cooking. Bullshit. They take the bottle and they go like this, right? So right off the bat, people are putting 80 or 100 grams of fat into their meal. Now, if you're a meat, dairy, and egg eater, you can add another couple hundred grams of fat per day. And if you're a regular vegan that's eating all the mock meats and all the mock products, you can also add a couple of hundred grams of fat. So people are eating 2, 3, 400 grams of fat per day. I'm telling you, get rid of the fat. You're going to feel so alive and so much better. And that's why I do eat all the fruits and the veggies that I can. And Doug Graham will talk about this. Eat as much as you can until you're full. The reason I do 23 to 30 bananas a day, well, I'm looking for the calories. Bananas are around 100 calories. And I work out every day, so I want about 2,500 to 3,000 calories per day. It was the easiest way to do it. Now, it doesn't have to be based on bananas like I'm doing it. Doug will tell you, man, eat some nectarines, eat 40 or 50 peaches a day. Eat as, get the calorie count in. Now, I like doing bananas all the time because I'm a simple dude and I like the same foods over and over again. So for me, it's just an easy way to get my, 2,500 to 3,000 calories per day. But definitely you're going to feel better if you eat cleaner. And trust me, in the long run, your body is going to thank you for this. You can get away with it at first with eating all the nasty stuff, all the nasty vegan stuff. And listen, I'm concerned about ethics the most, anyways. So I want people to be ethical. But like you said, eventually you're going to want to feel good for yourself and you're going to want to be a good representative. Now, I got a beard going right now, but when my beard is shaven, I'm 55. People think I'm in my low 40s. this and then my joke comment is, well, try eating a fucking mango once in a while. You'd be amazed at the results, right? So you need to look the part if we're going to reach these meat, dairy, and egg eaters, because we live in a superficial society. If you don't look good and you don't look healthy, the meat, dairy, and egg eaters, even though they look unhealthy and they don't look good, they're still going to look at us and go, screw that. But if we walk the talk and we start looking the part, right? And I always, show them, this is a 55-year-old man, at 29 years vegan. Look at the pipes. And they go, oh, shit. The students would come up and go, man, I didn't know vegans could, look so good and be so. I'm like, well, I work out all the time and I eat well. What do you mean? Try it sometimes and stop thinking that only meat, dairy, and eggs can give you strength. Look at the animal kingdom, for crying out loud. The biggest land mammal on this planet, elephants, vegans, rhinos are vegan, hippos are vegan. Stop thinking that you need the cows, the animals you eat are herbivores. Right? Look how big the cows are. Look how big the pigs are from eating plants. Stop it. Stop thinking that it's only meat, dairy, and eggs that can make you big and strong. It's everything. But I would recommend all my longtime vegan friends, you get on the frugivore path, definitely get on the whole foods path of veganism. You're going to feel a lot better.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And there's a documentary for like more the fitness one, which is the Game Changer that people can watch. You mentioned religion also. There's a documentary I watched recently called Christspiracy. So there's a lot to dig, and also people really interested in longevity. You can check out my interview with Lou Corona. He's 74. He's doing 7-minute planks. He looks much younger. So there's a lot of inspiration there that we can look at. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm curious on one thing here, living in Ubud, in my circles, where like people are pretty conscious and informed, so people would know about like factory farming. Most people would have tried to be vegan. I know a lot of people who tried to be vegan, and then somehow they say it doesn't work for them for health reason. It could be men thinking, okay, I got weak, and some women think for their hormones, they need a little bit like of meat or animal products. Um, yeah, how do you it's not even to debate the health, but how do you feel when people say, look, I tune into my body, I feel what's right for me, and I feel that for me having a piece of meat every week really helps, and I try to source it as well as possible.
Well, first of all, nonsense. We talked about what it is. It's addiction. When people tell me that they can't live without it, it's no different than a cigarette smoker's got to sneak out once a day and smoke a cigarette. An alcoholic's got to sneak out and have a couple drinks to feel better. Somebody with a sex addiction got to sneak out, have sex, cheat with somebody. A
Can,
gambler that's
can
got to
I
sneak out and make a wager in order to feel alive again. So,
can I
uh,
pause you for a
yeah,
second?
sure.
Just I do feel though that there are some people who, for example, they work on longevity, they do studies, they really think it's better for them. Well, usually the smoker that keeps smoking, they rarely really think it's good for them. It's just they'll admit, okay, I can't because I'm addicted to it. So what,
Right.
like, these people really think it's good for them?
Well, we talked about it already. They're misinformed. They seem to think you could trick your body and your mind into believing anything you want. And if you're convinced that you can't be vegan, that you need some meat, some dairy, some eggs, if you go vegan, it's not going to work because you still have the addictive mindset that, oh my God, I'm not. It's the same thing that they do when they do a study. They give a half a group of people a sugar pill. They give the other half of people the real pill. Then the people on the placebo go, man, I feel great. And the doctors are like, really? How? We just gave you a sugar pill. What do you mean you feel great? So they've convinced themselves that this pill is going to make them feel better. And it's the same thing in reverse. If you're not willing to understand that animals don't deserve to be exploited, that the human body is truly frugivore, that we're the ultimate herbivores. If you haven't convinced yourself and you don't believe that, It's not going to work. I'll tell that to all the people that try to be vegan. You can't try to be vegan. You need to be vegan. You can't try to be ethical. You can't try to be healthy. You can't try to go to college and get a degree. You have to commit. I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to better myself. Same thing, you have to say, I am not going to take part in exploitation anymore, and I'm not going to be unhealthy anymore, and I'm going to eat plant-based foods. And we all know from all the same studies that everything the human body needs comes from the plant kingdom. I mean, once again, we're feeding animals all the crops that we should be eating directly. And then we're getting all the nutrients secondarily. And then we're getting those nutrients that comes along with huge amounts of fat that we don't need, huge amounts of cholesterol that we don't need, huge amounts of all the junk that we don't need. But it's that junk in meat, dairy, and eggs that make us addicted and make us think, oh, I just don't feel right until I get that piece of meat. And all of a sudden they get the piece of meat and they're like, oh, I feel better. Just like the alcohol, just like the cigarette smoker. When you get that addictive thing that makes you feel good, you're always going to feel better. You got to get over the hump, and old habits are hard to break. I get it. New habits are hard to form. I understand that, but it's a mindset. Veganism is a pure mindset that I don't believe animals were put here for me. I'm not going to take part in the abuse, in the torture, in the rape, in the baby stealing, in the murder. And why would I need to eat a carcass? Why would I need to eat something that came out of a hen's asshole? Why would I need to drink fluid that oozed out of a cow's udder? Why would bestiality be necessary for the human being to survive? Because the eggs and the dairy is pure bestiality. And then when we look at the meat too, breast, we eat legs, we eat thighs, we eat rumps. This is all bestial behavior. It is so barbaric and prehistoric. I'm still amazed. Honestly, even after 29 years, and I know humans really don't care about much, I'm still amazed that people still want to justify all the things that we're doing to the animals from an ethical standpoint and from a health standpoint. I mean, look around the world. When I told the students in America, I go, wait a second, do we live in a vegan society here? A lot of them would scream out, hell no. I said, okay, then how come there's a drugstore in every street corner in America? What, from all the blueberries and all the plums that people aren't eating? How come when you turn on the 5 o'clock news and you hear a story about, oh, Bob Smith had a heart attack yesterday, what happened to Bob? They never say, well, he ate too much broccoli. Yeah, I told him all those bananas were going to do him in one day. Look around. Nobody's vegan. Everybody's sick. There's drugstores everywhere. The pharmaceutical industry combined is $1 trillion industry. For what reason? Again, for the fruits and vegetables that no one's really eating? Look around what everybody's eating and look around and see everyone's sick. And look at your family. Look at my family. I talked about it during my speech, right? Everyone in my family died from heart disease or cancer or diabetes. It's running rampant. And I want to be fair. It's still possible to get sick even if you do live a vegan life because there's stress in people's lives, right? There are other things that cause diseases. Insomnia causes diseases, lack of sleep, chemicals in the environment. There are other factors that can and will make vegans sick, but you can eliminate the main cause of illness, which is meat, dairy, and eggs, which is animal products, by becoming vegan. And from there, you got to clean up some other things, got to get rid of the stress, the insomnia, get away from the chemicals and all that pollution stuff as well.
Mm. Yeah, and you can be sure that when all these people have diseases, it's not related to the diet officially. But if God forbid one vegan has a heart attack or something, it's definitely the diet then in the official story.
It's really sad when that happens. Like they always blame veganism, but then when a meat eater gets sick, it's never the meat, cheese, milk, or eggs. It's always something else. It's genetics.
Yeah.
It's something. And my uncle, by the way, who I don't get along with, he's a foot doctor, a podiatrist. Years ago, about 10 years ago, I had my ankles were hurting, and I went in to see him. I'm like, hey,
Oh,
Uncle,
that's
Lenny,
your diet, bro.
Yeah.
What's your vegan
First thing
diet?
he says is you need to eat some meat. So I say, Uncle Lenny, so are you telling me hot dogs and cheese would make my ankles feel better? For the first time in 20 some odd years, he actually laughed and realized the absurdity and the stupidity in what he was saying. I said, there's something else going on. Can you please be a fucking podiatrist and look at my ankles and tell me what's going on? He checked everything out. He goes, you know what, Gary? I think you're wearing the wrong size shoes. I think you're wearing 9.5. You need nines. I said, I knew it was something stupid. Are you really? I got some nines, and then all of a sudden, ankle problem went away. Imagine that. I healed my ankles without meat, cheese, milk, and eggs. But this is the stupid mentality people have. God forbid a vegan does get ill. It's always the veganism, but a meat, dairy, and egg eater gets sick all the time, and it's always something else.
So you talk, yeah, you talked about not participating for sure. Stage one, stage two, activism, right? Like we're also here to um, share about what we feel is right. So what's and you mentioned at the beginning, you said now you don't think media is the best way. Maybe did you mean mainstream media or also social media? I'm curious about it.
No,
And what's the best
mainstream
way?
media. So mainstream media to me,
What's
the
the best
problem
way?
is yeah, so the problem was that no matter how serious the discussion got, and all my discussions are serious, right after they were done airing my segment, here comes the weather forecast. Here comes the sports. Who won Monday Night Football? Who got traded over here? Then all of a sudden it's who got divorced in Hollywood? And what's the new big movie? And where's the stock market at? And as I was watching the news, even if they led with one of my stories, and several Michigan outlets did, all of a sudden it was this entertainment. It's 30 minutes of entertainment. And by the time they got to the end of the 30-minute broadcast, my story at the beginning meant nothing to them. They just were looking for the next news show, entertain me. So I did not find much value in mainstream media. Now, it I did a lot of media when I was in Israel in 2012 and 13. I did a huge lecture tour there where they said I converted 5 to 10% of the population. I did not want to do the media because I stopped doing American mainstream media around 2006 and 7. I don't know if people realize that. They convinced me, oh, come on, do some media. They're really interested here. I said, okay. So I know that some activists told me they became better activists because of the media I did in 2012 and 13. So I don't want to completely wipe it off. I talked about that pie earlier. So my problem really is too much focus on media. Mainstream media, make it a small little segment, right? Again, education-based activism, make it a huge segment. I don't even think civil disobedience and I built my activism on it back in the 90s. That's why the teachers invited me in, but I don't think it's effective anymore. I think some things you have to move on from because they lose its power, lose the luster. I think back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and at the tail end of the 90s, civil disobedience meant something. If you sat down and protested and had the police arrest you and take you to jail, and you confronted the judge and they put you in prison, boy, it was something. Oh my God, they went to jail for the animals. Nowadays, you go to jail for the animals, you're just a kook. You're just a nut. Nobody cares if you go to jail anymore for what you believe in. Hunger strikes used to mean something. And Barry Horn, a great activist from Britain who ended up dying from I think he did a 73-day hunger strike back in the 80s or the 90s. Um, I tried it too when I was in prison. Again, I caught the tail end of things being effective like that, but I don't think a hunger strike would have any effect in this day and age. So I just want to move on to more effective forms of activism. Now, I do find social media to be effective. That's why I'm now taking part in it. Because I can just focus, I could tailor my message, and that's my whole. Like you go to real Gary Yourofsky on Instagram, that's all you're getting is animal rights messages, ethical message. This is the focus. But if you go turn on the 5 o'clock news wherever you're at and you catch a story from me, as soon as they move on to the next story, you've already forgotten about what I said. No matter how much you might have been interested, even if it affected you, By the time they get to, oh, Jennifer Aniston is doing this movie, and oh, Djokovic is not doing well in tennis right now, and Alcaraz and Sinner beat him again, and all of a sudden, oh, LeBron James brought his son on his team on the Lakers. You've forgotten about what I've already said. But at least if you go to social media, right, people are going there because they want to listen to this message. They want to hear this message. So, yeah, I think social media and mainstream media, a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, thanks for sharing. And you're here today, and if people want to start spreading the message, a very easy thing you can do is you can share this video with someone that you feel would receive well the message on your social media. It helps if you like, if you comment. Just tell us like what you feel. If you have any question, I read and answer all of them, and that's a good start. Or then, of course, even do your own content as we're doing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I wanted to ask you is you've been on that path for a while. Do you feel it's growing, the vegan movement?
Yeah, it's growing. Listen, I started 29 years ago. Back then, nobody knew even how to pronounce the word vegan. So yeah, it's growing. More people are vegan. I'm hearing 2%. But when you think about all the victims that are suffering and dying, 2% of the world's population is not good enough. It's not big enough, but it's up from when I started. I think when I started, it was maybe a half a percentage of the world's population was vegan. And of course, all the availability of all the vegan food that's now out there, all the plant-based foods. You can go to just about any restaurant and get a plant-based meal. Back when I started, if you didn't like Boca burgers, there was one veggie burger on the market. It was Boca burgers. And if you didn't like it, you were shit out of luck. But nowadays, there are 30 or 40 different veggie burgers on the market with different tastes and textures. And you get unhealthy ones loaded with fat that taste like meat. You get clean ones. By the way, there's a clean one that hit the market last year called Actual Veggies. That's the name of the company. I don't know if it's available where you're at, but out here in the States, it's literally 6 or 7 or 8 vegetables. And it doesn't taste meaty. It tastes like vegetables, but it's got the same shape as a patty. So it's got that comfort feel. So you can get clean food. You can get clean veggie burgers. You can get dirty veggie burgers. And there's, clean stuff that's definitely out there and available. So it's definitely growing. People know more about it, but it's not growing quickly enough for the victims. It's just not happening fast enough. I thought we'd be a lot further along the way. If you ask me, after 29 years, where we would be, I thought we'd be a lot further in the animal rights game. At the very least, 29 years ago, I thought by now animal-based circuses would be abolished all over the planet. I thought dog racing and horse racing would be abolished. Product testing would be abolished. Horse carriages would be abolished. And all these things are still thriving all over the planet. So it's frustrating at the same time, even though it's
La
growing.
corrida also.
Yeah, even though it's growing, it's not quick enough. And now I want to bring something else real quickly. We're not going to delve into it, but if you ask me why it's not growing quickly enough, it's because human rights issues. I think the main impediment to the advancement of animal liberation right now is human rights. Because when you talk about humans, animals don't get talked about. So all I want to do nowadays too is flip the script. I'm not saying humans don't deserve rights. But human rights people say humans first, animals last. What I want to do is say animals first, humans last. In fact, if you think about it, I believe that if you teach somebody to be kind to a chicken, a cow, a pig, or a turkey, a mouse, a spider, a bee, an ant, it'd be a lot easier to teach them to be kinder to other human beings that look and act differently than others. So I think the way to achieve liberation for everybody is by destroying speciesism first. So I want to focus on the animals, and that's how we can advance animal rights focus on them, because the human rights people never bring animal rights stuff into their discussions. And you know what? I don't say this jokingly or sarcastically. It's a brilliant move. It's a brilliant move not to talk about that. So I would ask all the animal rights people too, I'm not saying you can't believe in human rights stuff, but keep it out of the animal rights discussion. When it's time for animal rights, discuss female animals being raped and having their babies stolen from them. Discuss what the animals are going through first and foremost, and we'll get to the finish line a lot quicker if we focus on the animals.
Yeah, it's almost like we've made some progress towards including every human, and now we're doing really pretty well with human rights, at least officially. But yeah, we haven't included animals. And to me, it's part of that evolution where it depends on really who do we connect with and who do we identify with. Because it used to be like, okay, it's my tribe. At some point, people were more like racist, right? Like it'd be, okay, we're white, but the black slaves, they're not even humans. They don't deserve those rights. And then they got the rights. Now we have human rights. I believe at some point it'd be animal rights. And then also in the way we connect with nature, um, to me, the way is like when we really take that whole world as part of ourselves, then we want to give love to everything, right? But it's like maybe one stage at a time. So from my tribe to my country to my color of skin to my like being human to being sentient beings, and then to include all of it. Yeah, I think it's part of that evolution, and the more we feel at one with the whole, and see everything as part of ourselves, the more we just be respectful and give love to everything. So I think the next stage is for sure animals, and I hope in 20 years we will look at how we treated animals the same way as we would look at today at people who had like slaves from people from another race, and find it really weird and not nice.
I think
Yeah.
Da Vinci once said that there will
Yeah.
come a time when men such as I will look at the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men. And I am waiting for that day to happen, because nobody would tolerate anymore nobody would tolerate what we do to animals if we were doing it to the human beings. If we had a slaughterhouse where we hung black people upside down, where we hung women upside down and sliced their heads off, nobody would justify it. But all of a sudden, if you make a slaughterhouse with cows and pigs and chickens hanging upside down, people want to justify it. So we need to open up our circles of compassion and start including the animals, and realize that the injustice happens. Injustice anywhere, there's a threat to justice everywhere. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that. And it's time. It's time to focus on the animals. Focus on the animals right now, and we're going to get to liberation for them a lot quicker, and then eventually the liberation of all humans a lot quicker. But it needs to start with the animal kingdom.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I also think maybe in the next years we'll start seeing politicians from mainstream politics maybe talk about abolishing factory farming. I mean, obviously, it might go against a lot of lobbies and economical interests, but that's also what I hope. Do you see any political action coming anytime soon in the mainstream on this?
Yeah, I think it's happening. In fact, there's a great politician from Australia, your former country that you were living at, Emma Hurst, is heavily involved in bringing animal rights and animal liberation issues to the forefront, and that's what she focuses her political time on. So we're going to see a lot more people like Emma around the world. And there was a time, I admit, I didn't think politics was valuable in any way, shape, or form, or passing laws. But Emma is starting to help me see that, you know what, it is part of that pie that needs to be focused on. It shouldn't be a huge part, because you've got to change people's minds first. You got to, change the conscience of society first. But people like Emma need to be there as well to finally put that stuff on the books and say, you know what, this is illegal, this is a crime. And if you commit an act of violence, intentional violence, and exploitation against animals, you're going to jail just like you would if you committed these acts against a human being. So politics needs to happen too. We need more politicians on board. Um, I also, though, want to point out, though, all the people that we collectively admire throughout history, they weren't politicians. They were activists. I think activism is way more important. We talk about Nelson Mandela, who might have become a politician later on. Well, that's when he was all worn out after 27 years in prison. So Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X and Dr. King and Cesar Chavez, Rosa Parks, Frederick Douglass, all these people were activists. Those are the people that changed the world. So everybody out there who is vegan, who wants to do something effective, become an activist, start doing stuff, do actions, get online. I don't care if you're doing videos, get out on the streets, join an Anonymous for the Voiceless group, start an AV chapter somewhere, do something active to inform people. That's going to make the most amount of change.
Amazing. Thanks, Gary. And if people want to start a podcast, you can hit me up. I help other conscious leaders and also definitely vegan activists with podcasting and sharing their voice online. Thank you so much, Gary. I loved having you. And I'd love to give you the mic for anything else you'd like to share before we close this episode.
I just want to tell people to get out there and do something again. If you're vegan, it's great, but it's not enough to just be vegan. You got to speak up and speak out. And if you're not vegan yet, come on now. This is 2025. Stop living like a caveman or a cave woman. You don't need the cut up corpses of animals anymore. You don't need things that ooze out of a cow's udder, things that come out of a hen's ass, or things that bees are vomiting up. That's for you, my brother. Open up those circles of compassion. Get rid of all the animal products. They're unnecessary. You don't need them. Don't take part in exploitation. And live vegan. You're going to feel a lot better. You're going to have a clean conscience. And you're going to make a world of difference to a bunch of animals that need your support.
Thank you so much, Gary. And thank you. Much love to everyone.